What if a single thrust of a spear could pierce not just flesh, but the very soul of a hardened warrior? On a hill called Golgotha, a Roman centurion stood at the foot of a cross, tasked with overseeing the death of a man named Jesus. His act, plunging a spear into the side of the crucified, seemed like a routine duty, the kind he'd performed countless times. But what happened next was anything but ordinary. It was a moment that shattered his world, turned a soldier into a saint, and left a legacy that echoes through time. This is no mere tale of history, it's a story of redemption that might just challenge everything you believe. Today we dive into the gripping journey of the Roman centurion, a man whose life was forever changed by the crucifixion of Jesus. From his role as a disciplined officer of the empire to his bold proclamation of faith, we'll uncover the events that shook the earth in his heart. We'll explore the supernatural signs that defied reason, the courage that led him to abandon his past, and the sacrifices that made him a revered figure in Christian tradition. This is a story of doubt transformed into belief, of guilt redeemed by grace, and of a truth that speaks to us all. By the end of this video, you'll discover a hidden truth about a soldier's transformation that could shift how you see faith, forgiveness, and second chances. You'll walk away with a new perspective on what it means to truly see the divine in the midst of darkness. Stick with us to the end, and you might find yourself inspired to reflect on your own moments of awakening. This isn't just a story, it's a call to look deeper, to question, and to find hope in the unexpected. If you're ready for a journey that will touch your heart and challenge your mind, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell so you never miss a story like this. Share this video with someone who needs a spark of inspiration, and let's dive into the incredible tale of the centurion who pierced Jesus' side. The hill of Golgotha, known as the place of the skull, was a stark arena where Rome's brutal justice was displayed for all to see. On this pivotal morning, the air buzzed with raw human emotion as a man named Jesus of Nazareth faced crucifixion. The scene was a chaotic tapestry of voices, angry shouts from accusers, anguished cries from mourners, and the cold commands of Roman soldiers. The wooden crosses, rough-hewn and heavy, stood ready to bear their grim burden, each one a symbol of Rome's unyielding power. This was not merely an execution, it was a public lesson, a warning to any who dared challenge the empire's authority. At the center of this maelstrom stood a Roman centurion, his figure imposing yet overshadowed by the weight of the moment. His task was to oversee the death of a man accused of claiming to be a king, but what he would witness would unravel the very foundations of his world. The crowd at Golgotha was a microcosm of Judea's fractured society. The Jewish religious elite, their faces set with determination, watched closely, having orchestrated Jesus' conviction to protect their authority. Ordinary citizens, caught between fear and fascination, whispered rumors of miracles and prophecies. Jesus' disciples, though scattered, lingered on the edges, their hearts torn between hope and despair. The soldiers, clad in armor that gleamed dully under the morning light, moved with practiced efficiency, their hammers striking nails with a rhythm that echoed like a death knell. The centurion, standing tall amidst this chaos, was more than a supervisor. He was the linchpin holding this volatile scene together. His eyes scanned the crowd, alert for any sign of rebellion. Yet something about the man on the cross drew his attention, a quiet strength that seemed to defy the brutality around him. This moment, where human suffering met divine purpose, was the crucible in which a soldier's fate would be forged. To understand the centurion's role, we must immerse ourselves in the turbulent world of first-century Judea, a land chafing under the iron fist of Rome. The Roman Empire, sprawling across 3 continents, was a machine of conquest, its legions enforcing order from Britain to Egypt. Judea, however, was a restless province, its people fiercely devoted to their God and resentful of foreign rule. Roman taxes drained their resources, pagan idols offended their faith, and soldiers patrolling their streets were a constant reminder of subjugation. Uprisings like those led by the Zealots were met with swift and bloody retaliation, and crucifixion was Rome's preferred method to instill fear, its victims left to die in agony as a deterrent to others. Pontius Pilate, Judea's Roman governor, navigated this powder keg with a mix of pragmatism and ruthlessness. His tenure was marked by tensions with the Jewish Sanhedrin, the religious council that wielded significant influence over temple affairs. The trial of Jesus was a high-stakes clash of power. The Sanhedrin demanded his death to silence a teacher who challenged their authority, while Pilate, wary of sparking a riot, reluctantly agreed. This political dance shaped the centurion's mission that day. As a military officer, he operated within a rigid hierarchy where loyalty to Rome was non-negotiable. Failure to execute Pilate's orders could mean demotion, exile, or worse. Yet the charge against Jesus, King of the Jews, carried an unusual weight. It was not just a political accusation, but a claim that seemed to resonate beyond the earthly realm. The centurion, trained to suppress personal doubts, could not ignore the whispers of something greater at play, a tension that pulsed beneath the surface of this seemingly routine execution. The broader context of Roman military culture also framed the centurion's actions. Soldiers were not just enforcers, but symbols of imperial might, their presence a daily reminder of Rome's dominance. In Judea, they were often despised, viewed as oppressors by a people who longed for liberation. The centurion, as a leader, had to balance discipline with diplomacy, ensuring his men followed orders while avoiding unnecessary provocation. This delicate balance made the crucifixion of Jesus a uniquely charged event, one that tested the centurion's resolve and hinted at the extraordinary events to come. The centurion, later revered in Christian tradition as Longinus, was a man forged in the crucible of war. In his late 30s, he bore the scars of a life spent in service to Rome, both physical and unseen. His face, weathered by sun and battle, was a map of hard-won victories, his jaw set with the determination of a man who had faced death and emerged stronger. His eyes, sharp and calculating, missed nothing. The nervous twitch of a soldier, the defiant glare of a prisoner, the restless shifting of a crowd. Clad in armor that bore the dents of past campaigns, he carried himself with the quiet authority of a leader who commanded respect without demanding it. Yet beneath this stoic facade lay a man wrestling with the toll of his profession, a soul shaped by duty but touched by questions he dared not voice. This centurion was no mere grunt. He had climbed the ranks through grit and skill, surviving ambushes, quelling riots, and leading men through chaos. His life was one of constant vigilance. Where a moment's hesitation could mean defeat, he had overseen executions before, rebels who cursed their fate, thieves who begged for mercy, but none had left a lasting mark. Each death was a transaction, a necessary act to maintain order. Yet as he stood before Jesus, something stirred within him. The man on the cross, bloodied and silent, did not fit the mold of the condemned. His composure, even under torture, was unnerving, like a riddle the centurion couldn't solve. Was it courage, madness, or something divine? The centurion's training told him to dismiss such thoughts, but his heart, hardened by years of violence, felt a crack forming, a crack that would soon widen into a revelation. His complexity as a character lies in his duality. He was a product of Rome's relentless machine, trained to value order above all, yet he was human, capable of doubt and wonder. He had seen the world's cruelty, slaves whipped, villages burned, families torn apart. But he had also glimpsed moments of grace, a comrade's loyalty, a stranger's kindness. These contradictions made him more than a faceless enforcer. They made him a man on the cusp of transformation, standing at the crossroads of history. In the Roman military, a centurion was the linchpin of the legion, a leader who turned orders into action. Commanding a century, roughly 80 to 100 soldiers, he was responsible for their training, morale, and discipline. His role demanded not just physical strength, but mental acuity, the ability to read men and situations with precision. Centurions were often promoted from the ranks, their scars and medals proof of their worth. They wore distinctive gear, a transverse crested helmet, shin greaves, and a vine staff used to enforce discipline, and were expected to lead from the front, whether charging into battle or maintaining order in occupied territories. On the day of Jesus' crucifixion, The centurion's duties were multifaceted. He coordinated his men to secure Golgotha, a site notorious for attracting volatile crowds. His soldiers had to erect the crosses, drive the nails, and guard the condemned, all while keeping the mob at bay. The process was grim but methodical. Prisoners were stripped, scourged, and nailed to the wood, their agony prolonged to maximize deterrence. The centurion's job was to ensure this went smoothly, reporting back to Pilate with confirmation of the deaths. He also had to assess risks. Would Jesus' followers attempt a rescue? Would the crowd turn violent? His training made him adept at such calculations, but the atmosphere at Golgotha felt charged with an energy he couldn't name. Beyond logistics, the centurion was a symbol of Rome's authority. His presence, clad in the empire's colors, reminded the crowd of their subjugation. Yet he was not a tyrant. Effective centurions knew when to wield the stick and when to offer the carrot, maintaining control through respect as much as fear. As he watched his men mock Jesus, placing a crown of thorns on his head, jeering at his supposed kingship, the centurion remained silent. Such behavior was standard, a way to dehumanize the condemned. But Jesus' response, or lack thereof, piqued his curiosity. The man's silence was not weakness, but a strength the centurion couldn't yet comprehend. Though bound by duty, the centurion was not a machine. As he stood before the cross, his mind churned with thoughts he couldn't fully articulate. He had overseen countless executions, each blending into a grim routine, the screams, the blood, the final gasps. But Jesus was an anomaly. The accusations claiming to be a king, stirring unrest, seemed mismatched with the man before him. The centurion had heard tales of Jesus, a healer who restored sight to the blind, a teacher whose words drew thousands, a figure who spoke of a kingdom beyond Rome's reach. Now seeing him in the flesh, he saw no trace of rebellion, only a quiet resolve that unsettled him. His thoughts turned to the politics of the day. The Sanhedrin's insistence on Jesus' death, Pilate's reluctant approval, these were not the actions of men confident in their justice. The centurion, a keen observer, sensed the undercurrents of fear and power at play. Why was this man such a threat? Why did his followers, though few, cling to him with such devotion? He recalled other prisoners who had fought or pleaded, their desperation a stark contrast to Jesus' calm. The centurion's pragmatism told him to focus on his task, but a question lingered. What if this man was more than he seemed? This doubt, small but persistent, was the first thread in a tapestry of transformation, a spark that would ignite under the weight of what was to come. As the centurion stood firm, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword, the atmosphere at Golgotha grew heavier, as if the world held its breath. The crowd's murmurs faded, replaced by an eerie stillness. Jesus, nailed to the cross, remained the focal point, his presence a quiet rebuke to the chaos around him. The centurion, trained to anticipate trouble, felt a shift, something beyond the physical, something that stirred the soul. The nails had been driven, the sentence begun, but the story was far from over. The ground would soon quake, the heavens would darken, and a single act, his own, would bind him to this moment forever. As he gazed at the man on the cross, the centurion stood on the precipice of a truth that would shatter his world and redefine his destiny. The crucifixion had reached its grueling peak, and the centurion, standing resolute amidst the clamor, received a final order: to ensure the condemned were dead. His gaze fixed on Jesus, whose body hung limp on the cross, blood and sweat mingling in streaks across his torn flesh. The centurion, a man accustomed to the finality of death, gripped his spear, its iron tip glinting with purpose. This was no act of malice but of duty, a routine check to confirm the prisoner's fate. Yet as he stepped forward, something held him back, a fleeting hesitation born of the man's unearthly calm. With a steady hand, he thrust the spear into Jesus' side, piercing flesh and bone. According to later Christian tradition, blood and water poured from the wound, a moment that would take on profound significance. Some accounts passed down through centuries claim this sacred flow touched the centurion's eyes, miraculously restoring his vision. A story not found in the Gospels but cherished as a symbol of spiritual awakening. This act, though brief, was a turning point. The centurion had carried out countless orders, But this one felt different. The spear, an extension of his authority, had breached not just a body but a mystery. He stepped back, his breath catching as he watched the crimson and clear streams mingle. The crowd, unaware of the moment's weight, continued their murmurs. But for the centurion, time seemed to pause. His mind raced. Was this truly the end of a rebel, or had he just pierced something divine? The tradition of his healed vision, while not scriptural, reflects the deeper truth of this moment, a truth that began to stir within him, challenging the walls of his hardened heart. This single thrust, meant to close a chapter, instead opened a door to a new reality, one that would soon overwhelm him with signs beyond comprehension. No sooner had the spear left Jesus' side than the world itself seemed to rebel against the act. The ground beneath the centurion's feet shuddered violently, a deep, guttural rumble that sent soldiers and onlookers staggering. Rocks split with a sound like thunder, their jagged edges gaping like wounds in the earth. The sky, once bright with the midday sun, darkened as if cloaked in mourning, casting an eerie shadow over Golgotha. This was no natural eclipse. It was a darkness that pressed against the soul, heavy and unnatural, as though the heavens themselves wept. The centurion, steady in battle, felt his pulse quicken. He had faced storms and quakes, but this was different, a cosmic upheaval that seemed to scream of divine wrath or sorrow. Then came the most astonishing sign, recorded in the Gospel of Matthew, 27:52-53. Tombs around Jerusalem cracked open, and figures long dead rose, their forms moving through the holy city, seen by many. Imagine the centurion's shock as whispers reached him of these resurrected saints, men and women once buried, now walking among the living. This was no rumor of a single miracle. It was a wave of the impossible, a breach in the natural order that defied everything he knew. His men, usually brash and unflinching, exchanged nervous glances, their hands tightening on their weapons. The crowd, too, shifted from anger to fear, some falling to their knees, others fleeing in panic. The centurion stood frozen, his mind struggling to process the chaos. These were not the tricks of a charlatan, but signs of a power greater than Rome, greater than death itself. Each tremor, each shadow, each whispered report of the risen dead chipped away at his skepticism, pulling him toward a truth he was not yet ready to name. The centurion's world, built on order and control, began to crumble under the weight of these events. His heart pounded as he looked up at Jesus, whose lifeless form seemed to radiate a presence that defied death. The earthquake, the darkness, the tales of risen saints. These were not mere coincidences, but a divine chorus proclaiming something extraordinary. He had seen men die, their eyes filled with fear or defiance. But Jesus was different. Even in death, he seemed to command the moment, as if the universe itself bent to his will. The centurion's training urged him to dismiss these thoughts, to attribute the chaos to chance or superstition. Yet his soul stirred with a conviction he could no longer ignore. In that moment, words escaped him, raw and unbidden. Surely this man was the Son of God. His voice, barely above a whisper, trembled with awe and fear. This was no casual remark, but a confession, a leap from doubt to recognition. The centurion, a man of action, was not given to flights of fancy. His proclamation was the culmination of hours spent observing Jesus, his silence under mockery, his forgiveness amidst pain, his dignity in suffering. Now, with the earth shaking and the sky darkened, the pieces fell into place. This was no ordinary man. This was a figure of divine authority, whose death had unleashed forces beyond human understanding. The centurion's heart, once armored against emotion, now beat with a mix of reverence and dread. He had pierced the side of a king, not of Rome, but of a realm eternal. Amid the chaos, one figure remained an anchor of calm: Jesus himself. Even as the centurion grappled with the unfolding miracles, he couldn't tear his eyes from the man on the cross. Hours earlier, Jesus had endured unimaginable torment, scourged until his back was raw, crowned with thorns that pierced his brow, mocked by soldiers who spat and jeered. Yet through it all, he had not cursed his tormentors or pleaded for release. Instead, as the Gospel of Luke records, 23:34, he prayed, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." These words, spoken amidst agony, struck the centurion like a blade. Forgiveness? For the very men who nailed him to the wood? It was a response so alien to the centurion's world of retribution that it felt like a glimpse into another reality. Jesus' steadfastness was not just stoicism, but a divine serenity that seemed to hold the chaos at bay. While the crowd screamed, the soldiers taunted, and the earth itself rebelled, Jesus remained a beacon of grace. His eyes, though dimmed by pain, carried a compassion that pierced the centurion's defenses. This was no rebel clinging to a lost cause. This was a man whose suffering bore meaning, whose death was not defeat but fulfillment. The centurion, who had seen countless men break under lesser trials, marveled at this strength. It was as if Jesus' very presence challenged the brutality of Golgotha, turning a place of death into a stage for divine love. This contrast between the world's cruelty and Jesus' mercy planted a seed in the centurion's soul, one that would soon blossom into faith. The supernatural events did not touch the centurion alone. They rippled through everyone at Golgotha, each person reacting in their own way. The Roman soldiers, typically brash, grew uneasy as the ground shook and darkness fell. Some muttered about omens, recalling tales of gods angered by mortal hubris. Others tightened their grips on their spears, as if steel could ward off the unseen. The crowd, once bold in their demands for crucifixion, now wavered. Some, gripped by fear, cried out that they had condemned an innocent man. Others, hardened by skepticism, dismissed the signs as tricks of nature. Yet even they glanced nervously at the sky. Among Jesus' followers, a few, perhaps Mary Magdalene or John, stood steadfast, their grief tempered by a flicker of hope, as if they sensed a greater plan unfolding. The centurion, as leader, felt the weight of these reactions. His men looked to him for guidance, their eyes questioning what he himself could not fully grasp. The crowd's shifting mood threatened to spark chaos, and he knew a single misstep could ignite a riot. Yet his focus remained on Jesus, whose death had triggered this upheaval. The collective response, fear, awe, doubt, mirrored his own inner turmoil, but it was his voice that cut through the noise. His proclamation, "Surely this man was the Son of God," was not just personal. It was a beacon for others, a spark that would later fuel the spread of a new faith. The centurion's words, born in the crucible of Golgotha, carried a weight that would echo far beyond that hill. As the darkness lingered and the earth settled, the centurion stood rooted, his mind a whirlwind of awe and uncertainty. The spear thrust, the quaking ground, the risen saints, these were not the end, but the beginning of a journey he could not yet fathom. Jesus' death, far from closing the story, had opened a door to something greater, something that would demand everything of the man who had pierced his side. The centurion's proclamation was a first step, a crack in the armor of his old life. What lay ahead, a path of sacrifice, faith, and redemption, would test his courage in ways no battlefield ever could. As the crowd began to disperse, their voices hushed by fear and wonder, the centurion knew one thing: the man on the cross had changed him, and the world forever. The crucifixion of Jesus marked not just the end of a life, but the beginning of a profound change in the centurion. A man history would come to know as Longinus. Standing at Golgotha, his heart still echoing with the words, "Surely this man was the Son of God." He felt the weight of a truth that demanded more than acknowledgement. It demanded action. This Roman officer, once defined by his allegiance to the empire, now faced a crossroads. The man on the cross had shown him a kingdom not built on swords or conquest, but on love and sacrifice. To follow this path meant abandoning everything he had known: his rank, his security, his identity as a soldier. Yet the events he had witnessed, the quaking earth, the darkened sky, the risen saints, left no room for half measures. Matthew 27:52-53. They were a divine call, and the centurion, with a courage born of newfound conviction, chose to answer. This transformation was not instantaneous, but a wrestling of the soul. Imagine the nights he spent replaying the crucifixion, haunted by Jesus' forgiveness and serenity. His mind, trained to value discipline and order, grappled with the radical teachings he began to seek out. whispers of a risen Christ, stories of a love that transcended death. He sought out Jesus' followers, men and women who risked their lives to share the gospel. Their words, rooted in the same compassion he had seen on the cross, stirred him. The centurion, who had once commanded men in battle, now humbled himself to learn, to question, to believe. He shed his armor, both literal and figurative, trading the empire's eagle for the cross's promise. This choice was a rebellion against Rome's values, a declaration that true power lay not in domination, but in surrender to a higher purpose. Renamed Longinus in Christian tradition, the centurion embarked on a mission that redefined his existence. No longer a soldier of Rome, he became a soldier of Christ, carrying the message of the crucifixion to anyone who would listen. His journey took him across Judea and beyond, to dusty villages and bustling cities, where he shared the story of the man whose side he had pierced. His words were not those of a polished orator, but of a witness, raw and compelling. He spoke of Jesus' compassion, of the miracles that shook Golgotha, and of a resurrection that promised hope to all. As a former Roman officer, his testimony carried unique weight. Here was a man who had served the empire, seen its might, and yet chose a different path. Longinus's mission was fraught with peril. The early Christian movement was a spark in a tinderbox, viewed as a threat by both Roman authorities and Jewish leaders. Converts faced ostracism, imprisonment, or worse. Longinus, with his military background, knew the risk better than most. He had seen Rome crush dissent with ruthless efficiency, yet he pressed on, driven by a fire kindled at the cross. He faced hostility from former comrades, who saw his conversion as betrayal, and suspicion from some Christians, who questioned the sincerity of a man once complicit in Jesus' death. Yet Longinus's authenticity, his willingness to speak of his guilt and redemption, won hearts. He became a bridge between worlds, showing that the gospel was not just for the Jewish faithful, but for all, regardless of past or status. Longinus's faith came at a steep cost. The Roman Empire, intolerant of threats to its order, viewed the spread of Christianity as sedition. As Longinus preached, he drew the attention of authorities determined to silence him. Tradition holds that he was arrested, interrogated, and pressured to recant his beliefs. Imagine the scene. Longinus, once a commander, now a prisoner, standing before a Roman official who demanded he return to the empire's fold. His refusal was unwavering, a testament to the depth of his transformation. The punishment was brutal, designed to break both body and spirit. According to legend, his tongue was cut out to stop his preaching, and his eyes were gouged to blind him, a cruel echo of the vision he was said to have gained at the crucifixion. Yet even in suffering, Longinus remained steadfast. Stripped of speech and sight, he radiated a peace that confounded his tormentors. His martyrdom, likely in the late 1st century, was not just an end, but a powerful witness. Early Christians, hearing of his sacrifice, drew strength from his example, seeing in him a reflection of Jesus' own endurance. Longinus's death was a seed planted in the soil of the early church, nourishing a faith that would grow despite persecution. His courage, born of the moment he recognized Jesus as the Son of God, became a beacon for those facing their own trials, proving that true loyalty was owed not to empires but to the eternal. Longinus's story did not end with his death. It grew into a legacy that resonates through centuries. In Christian tradition, he is venerated as saint. Longinus, a saint whose life embodies redemption and faith. Churches across the world honor him, from small chapels to grand cathedrals, where his image, often depicted with a spear, reminds believers of his pivotal role. He is particularly revered as a patron of those with vision problems, a nod to the tradition that Jesus' blood and water restored his sight. This story, while not in the Bible, carries symbolic weight. Longinus, once blind to divine truth, saw clearly through the grace of the crucifixion. Devotion to Saint Longinus grew especially strong in the Middle Ages, when pilgrims sought his intercession for ailments of the eyes and soul. Festivals and prayers in his name became common, and relics attributed to him, such as the spear said to have pierced Jesus, known as the Holy Lance, drew the faithful. These traditions, though rooted in legend, underscore Longinus's enduring impact. His story is a testament to the transformative power of an encounter with Christ, showing that even those complicit in great wrongs can find forgiveness and purpose. As one of the first Gentiles to recognize Jesus' divinity, Longinus holds a special place, symbolizing the gospel's universal reach. Longinus's transformation unfolded against the backdrop of a fledgling Christian movement struggling to survive. In the decades after Jesus' death, his followers faced relentless opposition. The Roman Empire, with its pantheon of gods and emperor worship, saw Christianity as a dangerous sect that undermined loyalty to the state. Jewish authorities, meanwhile, viewed it as a heretical offshoot threatening their traditions. Converts risked everything, family, status, life itself, to follow Christ. House churches, hidden in secret, became sanctuaries where believers shared stories of Jesus' teachings and miracles, often under the shadow of arrest. Longinus, as a former Roman officer, was a striking anomaly in this persecuted community. His conversion challenged the boundaries of the early church, which was initially rooted in Jewish tradition. His presence among believers, Gentiles, slaves, and outcasts, demonstrated that the gospel transcended ethnicity and rank. He likely faced skepticism from some Christians, who wondered if a man who had served Rome could truly embrace their faith. Yet his actions, his preaching, his sacrifice, proved his commitment. Longinus' story helped shape the church's identity as a universal body, welcoming all who sought redemption. His life bridged the old world of Roman power and the new world of Christian hope, paving the way for a faith that would one day reshape empires. The story of the centurion, known to many as Saint Longinus, is a powerful reminder that no one is beyond the reach of grace. From a Roman officer bound by duty to a martyr who gave everything for his faith, his journey shows us that transformation is possible, no matter our past. His moment of recognition at the cross, declaring Jesus as the Son of God, was not just a fleeting confession, but the start of a life redefined by love and sacrifice. Longinus teaches us that faith is a choice, a courage to see truth and act on it, even when the world stands against us. His legacy, carried through centuries, invites us to find hope in our own struggles and to embrace a purpose greater than ourselves. What moment in your life opened your eyes to a deeper truth? Maybe it was a time of crisis, a quiet realization, or an encounter that changed your path. Share your story in the comments below. We'd love to hear how you found light in the darkness. Your experience might inspire someone else watching today. If this story moved you, please like video and share it with a friend who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest videos, where we uncover more stories of faith and courage. Your support helps us keep these tales alive, so let's spread the hope together. Thank you for joining us on this unforgettable journey through the life of Saint Longinus. Your time and attention mean the world to us. We'll be back soon with more stories to inspire your heart and soul. So stay tuned, God bless, and we'll see you in the next video.